Alright, so we'll start formally. So hi everyone and welcome to another Facebook and Instagram and YouTube live session. Those ones in Instagram, you probably think it's a little bit different of a format because usually live session on Instagram you have the vertical image. I'm actually using a software called OBS Studio, which is a broadcasting software, and with this software I can broadcast to multiple platforms, so that's why I'm broadcasting with Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. And please put in the comments if you can hear me alright, if the I had already some feedback that the background on Instagram is a bit too busy, especially because of the comments. So if that's the case, please put in the comments and I'll endeavor to improve for the next live session. And this is section number 62 that I hold every Sunday evening, 8:30 p.m. Brisbane time. And tonight I'll be talking about 7 tips to improve your chances to get your first professional job in Australia. And I would like to thank you guys very much for your participation. Just for curiosity, whereabouts are you? Are you in Australia? Are you in Brazil? Are you in Colombia? Or whereabouts are you? So I know where the audience is from, and then we have a little bit of interaction. I can see that I've got few people on Facebook, and I've got few people in Instagram. So where are you now? I am in Brisbane. I am curious to know where you guys are. So yeah, thanks Fabian in Brisbane, Australia. Tammy in Brazil. Yeah, thank you very much, Tammy. Waking up early. It's 15 to 8 a.m. in the morning. And I've got, I don't know his or her name, but Gongati in Brisbane from Argentina. Oh, very good. And Daudio, he's from Brisbane as well. All right, Daudio, we should catch up and get a coffee or a beer sometime. So let's see here more. All right. Yeah, good. Thanks for participating. But for those that don't know me, probably some may not know me, but my name is Gerson Ida, and I'm the founder of www.engineersinaustralia.com, a website to share content of value and useful information to help you in your journey to validate your engineering qualification in Australia. And also I share information about subjects that are interesting for engineers. For example, workplace health and safety, environmental management, and the day of an engineering in Australia, and also about job opportunities and job recruitment. And the first 5 tips that I'm going to share with you guys tonight, they are related to your CV, your cover letter, and your professional interview. And then the last 2 tips are probably the most important ones. So stay tuned and stay with me until the end. You're not going to regret. But before I start, I would like to know, what is your main question when you are searching for a professional job in Australia? Have you tried already? Have you applied for a professional job in Australia? And did you get any feedback? Any positive feedback or any negative feedback? Did you make were you shortlisted? Did you make the interview? And if you make the interview, if you were not successful, what was the feedback that they provide to you? So it would be good to know, so I can then make comments during the live session. All right, so let's get down to the business now, and I'm really happy to be here to share my experience as a recruitment panel member and chair who have recruited, as I said before, lots and lots of engineers and project managers. And there's so many mistakes that I see that I decided to share those tips, so when you guys are applying for a professional job, you don't really make the same mistakes. So tip number 1, and as I mentioned, the first 5 tips are going to be about the curriculum vitae, the cover letter, and the professional interview. So tip number 1 is about cover letter. Consider the cover letter as a document more important than the CV. Some recruiters and some agents, they say you gotta look after your cover, your CV, CV. Sometimes they don't talk about the cover letter, but I will share with you what I do and what I notice that a lot of the recruitment companies and employers, they also do. Many job seekers, you guys, invest a lot of time in your CV or resume. And sometimes you don't really pay a lot of attention to the cover letter. So in my view, it's a very serious and almost fatal mistake in your job search journey. So why do I say that? I say that because many employers and recruiters, we read the cover letter first. So why do we read the cover letter first? Because the cover letter is going to be addressing a lot of the skills. It's going to be addressing the selection criteria and the key competencies that the company is after. So let's say that I am the company, and I then, in the position description that I advertised, I put 5 selection criteria. So I am interested to know which candidate is matching those selection criteria. And I can tell you that probably 70% of the candidates, they don't know how to address, or they don't address the selection criteria. And if you don't address the selection criteria, you lose, well, the recruiter loses interest in the candidate. So in my case, when I read the cover letter doesn't really address the selection criteria, depending on the number of candidates that I get from the advertisement. I may not even look at the CV, because if the candidate could not address the selection criteria, and usually the position descriptions, they say that you gotta address the selection criteria. So if you don't address the selection criteria in your cover letter, it's because probably you didn't even read carefully the position description, you didn't pay attention, and perhaps you're just applying in general terms. So the other reason why, so many will not even consider your resume until they are satisfied with the content of your letter. So this document is really, really and critically important. Now put in the comments, do you think that the cover, which one do you think is more important? The cover letter or the resume? So I'm interested to know what is your opinion. If your opinion matches with mine, or you have a different opinion. Tip number 2 is to customize your curriculum. So that is another common mistake that a lot of applicants they do. They use the same CV template and the content of the CV for all vacancies that they apply. So that's certainly a big mistake, because obviously jobs, if you're applying for a lot of jobs, those jobs, although they might be a little bit similar, but they will have things differently. And when you have your CV and your cover letter just as a general template to cover all bases, you ended up becoming very generic, and you will not probably address the competencies and addressing the skills that are necessary for that particular position. So the CV must be personalized and customized for each vacancy that you are contesting. So this doesn't really mean that you must make up experiences and skills just to align with the vacancy offered. But you gotta read the position description and then have a think about what is the company after. So do I have the experience that the company is after? If I do, then I will adapt my curriculum and my cover letter to suit what the company is looking for. So that is certainly a very important point and a big mistake that a lot of candidates, when I read resumes, and you got to put yourself in the shoes of the person who is recruiting, or the person who is, just a second, I'm running out of battery in my iPad. So you got to put yourself in the shoes of the recruiter and the company. The company will probably receive lots of applications. Nowadays, when we advertise a position for an engineer or a project manager, we usually get more than 50 applications, so 50. So imagine somebody having to shortlist and having 50 applications, which means curriculum vitae and cover letters. So at least 100 documents that the person or the panel needs to evaluate. So if in recruiters and companies, for example myself, because I have recruited already a lot of people, when I look at the resume, when I look at the cover letter, I know when the cover letter and the resume, they're just generic. And it doesn't give a very good impression. So I try to find things to extract some value from those documents, but when they are too generic, you just don't proceed with them because you have 50. And you probably just need 3 or 4 to shortlist. So you're not going to waste your time trying to find things that will make that resume or make that cover letter good. If the candidate did not have the effort or didn't put enough effort to put a high quality document in terms of CV and cover letter, so why should the recruiter spend a lot of time in trying to find good things in those documents? So the truth is, recruiters and companies, they're not going to spend time. If your document is not a good quality, it just goes to the bin, pretty much. So this means that you must emphasize the specific experiences that you have had and include in the body of your CV that addresses the skills or selection criteria required by the company. So tip number 3, also customize your cover letter. And the cover letter certainly is an opportunity when every time that you are addressing the selection criteria, you then obviously can write a little bit more. You can be a little bit more specific. You can provide the real examples that you use and the results that you achieve. So when you customize your cover letter, this is a strategy that will make your cover letter much more likely to be appreciated by the company or recruiters, as you will demonstrate your specific characteristics. Often they are unique to the advertised job vacancy. So let's say that somebody is advertising for, let's say, a draftsperson, and that draftsperson is going to work with road design. So you may be a civil draftsperson, but if you haven't worked with road design, and if you have worked with, for example, residential buildings, you're probably not going to have enough experience. So if you keep generic, the recruiter obviously will see that you don't really have road design and you're respecting, and perhaps they're not going to waste your time. But if you do have road design experience as a draftsperson, you cannot just have it generic that you are a civil draftsperson or civil design draftsperson. So you need to be specific. Put in your cover letter that you have done road design, vertical alignments, horizontal alignments, transition curves, and all of those things, and have a real example. I have done this design of this particular road when I did this, etc. So put a real example there and be very specific. So this is a very common mistake for candidates who use just a generic cover letter containing only personal and professional characteristics without really considering each position that may require some specific skills and experience. So a good idea and a good hint for you to customize your cover letter is to research the company that you are applying for or the industry that the company is in, and this will help you to customize your cover letter. Another good hint is to reach the recruitment agency and perhaps talk to the recruitment agency. Sometimes the companies, they ask the recruitment agency not to disclose the name, but the recruitment agent may not disclose the name of the company, but may talk about a little bit of the industry, a little bit about some of the potential projects or some of the specific needs that the company is looking for. So when you have that type of information, then you can customize and include in your cover letter. So tip number 4, answer the questions with real examples. So when the panel of interviewers, and this is related to your professional interview, so assuming that you had a very good CV, you had a very good cover letter, and obviously your experience aligns with the position, and you've been shortlisted, and you are participating in the professional interview. So this tip is for when you are participating in the professional interview. The panel will ask you questions. The panel will probably ask you one question for each selection criteria, and depending on the position, obviously a little bit more high-level positions, you may have 6 or 7 selection criteria, so you may need to answer 7 questions. But the lower level positions, for graduate engineers and so on, you may have 4 or 5 selection criteria, and you will need to answer then 4 or 5 questions. So when they ask questions, so when the panel of interviewers ask the questions, they are usually interested in knowing how you handled a real problem rather than a specific answer itself. Remember, recruiters, they want competent people, and competent people means that you have the knowledge and you have done that particular scenario. So it's not a hypothetical. When you answer a question, don't answer saying, oh yeah, if that happens, I would do this, I should do this, etc. Because it doesn't really demonstrate that you are competent. It demonstrates that probably you know the subject, but if you haven't done it, you cannot be considered competent. So it's really important that when you are answering questions during the interview, you use real examples of things that you've done, because you can demonstrate that you are competent in that. So try exploring, when you're answering the questions, try exploring the answers with the following structure, for example. So first, give the background of the project or the problem. Then describe the problem-solving methodology you used. And because you were solving a problem using a methodology, also try to, usually when you solve a problem, you come up with a few options, a couple of options or a few options. So then list the 2 or 3 options that you have elaborated, and be sure that you put the pros and cons of each option. So that's the structure. What's the problem? What were the options? The pros and cons of each option, and then explain the reasons why you chose a particular solution. And then describe the results obtained and the benefits achieved. And then in the end, report the reasons why your role was really instrumental in achieving the goals and results. Why was your performance very important to achieve that successful outcome? So the interview panel will also be appreciated if you use technical terminologies, standards, and technical specifications and quality tools during your response. Remember, if you are applying for an engineering position or a project management position, there are a lot of technical jargons and technical terminology that will create probably a good rapport with the interview panel. Just checking if is there any question or not. So tip number 4, be very clear when addressing the competencies or selection criteria. So that's another point for the professional interview. You are there answering questions, and most job vacancies for engineers or project managers, as I said before, they will have key competencies or selection criteria. And those interviews, the successful candidate, they usually chosen because of their merit. And merit means that you have addressed the selection criteria or key competencies, and you are better than the other ones. So it is really, really important that in your cover letter you address, obviously for you to be chosen for the interview, you have to address those you have to address those selection criteria and competencies in your cover letter. And make sure that in the cover letter and then when you're answering the questions at the interview, you are very, very clear. For example, let's say that one of the selection criteria is engineering knowledge. So and this is a very common selection criteria when you're applying for an engineering position. So the candidate should give an example of what was the engineering problem faced, what was the problem-solving methodology, what were the strengths and weaknesses of the solution options, which option you chose and why, and especially in the technical terms and the soft skills as well. Even though it's an engineering knowledge selection criteria, it's important to also explore a little bit of the soft skills, especially in terms of teamwork, especially in terms of reporting and governance. You know, when I talk about governance, about the KPIs and the key performance indicators, targets that you achieve during the delivery of the project. Yeah, we're almost half an hour, so I've got to speed up a little bit. So tip number 5, don't leave until the last minute to write up your CV or your cover letter. So that's a very important tip and a common mistake that I see that a lot of candidates they make. So your CV should be written with a lot of planning and research. You need to take your time to research the company, the industry in which the job is inserted. As I mentioned before, you need to probably talk to the recruiter about the job and clarify some questions. So this time that you're going to spend will serve then as a basis for customizing your CV, and will make the recruitment panel members interested and impressed by the quality of the information that it is in your CV and in your cover letter. Remember, they will be reviewing dozens of resumes, and they will be selecting those ones which have an extra thing. So when you have particular information about the company, when you are addressing the company needs, when you are addressing the company's expectation, this is the extra thing in your CV and cover letter. And then with social networks, research the project companies. Usually when you go to LinkedIn or Facebook, especially LinkedIn, they probably have the projects that are working. You can see what the company, you can understand sometimes about the culture of the company, and this sort of information is really important for you to include or to include in your words when you are writing your CV and your cover letter, especially if you kind of match the mission of the company. If you can find out what is the company's mission, and then you tailor your CV and cover letter, obviously aligning with the company's mission, it will probably create a good rapport with the recruitment panel and the company as well. And for those engineers that are in the planning or in the process of validating their engineering qualification, I'm just going to give a quick reminder before I go to the last 2 tips. A quick reminder that enrollment for my mentoring group, Validation Formula, closes midnight tonight, and I'm still offering the massive 9 bonuses. Just those 9 bonuses, they valued at $1,300, and you will get that for free. So hurry up, stop procrastinating, and start your life transformation now. Enroll in my online mentoring group, Validation Formula. I'm going to probably put the website in the comments, so you guys can have a look. See, how can I do that? So in Facebook, I'm going to copy and paste in the comments, and then on YouTube, copy and paste in the comments, and then in Instagram, you can go to my bio, and there is a link there, linktree/Gerson Ida. When you click on that link, it will open up a series of buttons, and there is a button to the top that talks about validation formula online mentoring program. So you can go there and have a look. Actually, there is a video or a couple of videos, one video in Portuguese, one video in English, that I explain the whole mentoring program, and I explain about the 9 bonuses as well. And the first lessons are going to be released next Saturday, 5th of September. 25 modules of a lot of content, and that will help you to organize your thoughts and to prepare a very strong and solid CDR. So take action now and join 5 of my students that have already applied and been approved by Engineers Australia. Alright, so go back to the tips. Tip number 6, which is part of the 2 special tips that I'm going to give to you. Increase your networking. So networking is vital for you to get noticed and get to know who is who in the zoo. And also elevate your profile, and you can make a lot of connections. So now with the COVID-19 restriction, obviously, it's a bit harder. But still there are organizations that are promoting, for example, online webinars and online catch-ups, where they might broadcast what they need in terms of skills and capabilities and people. Sometimes during those webinars and catch-ups, they say openly, yeah, we are recruiting these people here, etc., etc., and they need to have these characteristics. And because you already participate in those networking webinars, you know pretty much the culture of the company, you probably know the person, you can probably interact with that person during the webinar, and so on. So at the same time, you can also, when you attend those online webinars and catch-ups, you may even accumulate some CPD, continuing professional development. So those CPD hours will be really important when you're doing your validation process, because you got to provide your CPD report. So also part of the networking, you can also be part of my Telegram group. I've got a group in Telegram. But what is Telegram? Telegram is like WhatsApp. It's an app that I can create a group. In my group, I've got already more than 695 engineers. And in that group, I post regularly job opportunities and other hints about recruitment and about the validation process as well. So be part of my group. I usually send some messages every 2 days. So I'm going to paste the link for you to join the group here as well. Obviously, you gotta download the app first, Telegram. Those on Instagram, for you to join my Telegram group, is also in the link in my bio. When you click in the link, there will be a few buttons, and there is a button there to join my Telegram group called Engineering Qualification Validation. And as you can see in my background here, I've got my social media. So make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. All of those videos, they ended up going to my YouTube channel, and then the more subscribers and likes that I have, the stronger the channel, and then that information goes to more engineers. So tip number 7. Tip number 7 is about validate your engineering qualification. So majority of reputable companies will ask you if you have your engineering qualification validated, which demonstrates that you have been assessed by Engineers Australia and your qualification is equivalent to an Australian qualification. And especially in times like this, pandemic or crisis, can be financial crisis, can be health pandemic, whatever, there are a large number of engineers in the market. You cannot imagine how many engineers are in the market. although construction industry is still going strong, but certainly there is lots of engineers because before the pandemic, Australia is already not as hot as it was probably 10 years ago. So recruiters and employers, they have at their disposal a broad range of options. As I've mentioned before, every time that you advertise for a position, you will end up getting 50, 60, 70 positions. I think I've mentioned already in previous live sessions that I recruited a senior project manager, a civil engineer, and we got about 70 applicants, 70. So 70 applicants, and majority of them already validated and even RPQ, because here in Queensland you got to be RPQ, a registered professional engineer of Queensland, which means that they already approved in the stage 2 of the engineering profession. So let's imagine the following scenario. You represent the company that is hiring an engineer, and after having advertised a position for a part-time graduate engineer, and that is the dream probably for a lot of you guys, because you guys, if you guys international students, you can just work part-time. But let's say that somebody advertises for a part-time graduate engineer. A graduate part-time engineer probably doesn't really attract as many engineers as like a full-time position, because a lot of those established engineers, they after a full-time position. So graduate engineers, probably you have less candidates. But still you get about, let's say, 45 resumes. And the sorry. And the next step for you as part of the panel is to shortlist the candidates and come up with about 3 or 4 for a professional interview. So in this process, you're probably going to do a first cut, and then I can tell you, one of the criteria that you will be using is if the candidates are validated or not. And if you are not validated, then your job hunting in this position will be finishing here. So in a scenario where you could have more than half of the candidates already validated, then if you're not validated yet, your chances to be shortlisted are close to 0, unfortunately. And this is the reality. You cannot change that. So you don't want to be eliminated in this first cut, because you know that you have skills, you have capabilities, and you can be a good asset for the company. But if you're not validated, you're probably going to be cut. So to improve your chances, stop procrastinating. This process of validation will take time, and you've got to start your validation process now. And also, if you're not aware, in Victoria and New South Wales, from July next year, 2021, those 2 states, they will follow what Queensland is doing for 90 years. So they will have, engineers will have to be registered to be able to provide professional engineering services. And if they are not registered, they have to be directly supervised by a registered professional engineer. And a lot of companies, they are recruiting engineers to be autonomous. They don't have anybody else. They just have that particular engineer. So guess what? If they just have one engineer, if it is a small company, for example, for you to start, you have to be registered. And if you're not even validated, certainly your chances to be shortlisted is going to be really, really slim. So Queensland has been doing already for 90 years, and to be registered, you have to pass stage 2 with Engineers Australia or Professionals Australia. But then, for you to pass stage 2, it is a prerequisite that you have stage 1, and stage 1 is your qualification validation. So this means that in the near future, those engineers that are not registered will have a market disadvantage, as most companies will be hiring registered engineers. Here in Queensland, when you look at recruitment advertisement of an engineer, you will see that majority of them are already asking that the engineer needs to be RPEQ, a registered professional engineer of Queensland. So if you are not, you're probably not going to be even considered for a short listing. So these are the 7 tips that I wanted to share with you tonight. I hope these tips have been helpful to assist you in your journey to a professional job here in Australia. And again, overcome procrastination and visit my website at www.engineersinaustralia.com/validation-formula to learn more about the Validation Formula online mentoring program. Enrollments, they close midnight tonight, and the first lessons are going to be released already next Saturday. So if you have any particular question, I'll just check if I have any particular questions. No more questions. I'd like to certainly thank you very much for your participation. Thanks, Walter. Walter is in Instagram. Thank you, guys, and thanks for participating. And I do these live sessions every Sunday, 8:30 p.m. And I'll see you next Sunday. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.